This man over here is called Yaron Avraham. He may look like a normal Jewish Israeli to you, but this man used to be a jihadist. And I'm going to share with you his incredible story. He grew up in a religious Muslim Arab family in Lod in the 1980s. Yaron Avraham was exposed to crime and violence from a young age. As a 7-year-old, he was sent to distribute drugs to his family's customers in the neighborhood. At age 9, things went from bad to worse. Yaron's 16-year-old sister, whom he'd been the closest with out of his 17 siblings, was murdered by his older brothers in a family honor killing. She came home late one evening, and that was too suspicious in these extremist Muslim circles. The murder took place at home in the room next to Yaron's, and he heard everything. The family covered up the murder, and to this day, Yaron's sister is listed as missing in Israeli government records. But the family had a problem. Yaron began asking questions. He wanted to know where his sister went and what his brothers did to her. Sensing danger, Yaron's family decided to send him far away from home to a mosque that doubled as a boarding school in Gaza. I don't know if they knew about the education there or if they simply wanted to get rid of me, says Yaron. I found myself in a mosque, one of the most extreme in Gaza. The education he received there can only be termed child abuse. The mosque's explicit objective was to turn its students into shahids, martyrs, ready to sacrifice their lives for Islam's religious war, jihad. It's a very cruel education, says Yaron. Most of it is structured around death. You are forced to remember every morning that your ultimate goal was to return to the ground as quickly as possible. So it's walking in cemeteries, being taken to see terrorists killed by the IDF, kissing them, their hands, their feet, to get inspiration, so we'd want to be killed like them. There were no desks or beds in the mosque. 400 students slept on the ground to get used to the idea of returning to the ground. During meals, they sat on the floor and ate with their hands. Normal childhood activities like listening to music were strictly forbidden. There was no room for individuality. Children who were naturally left-handed were forced to eat with their right hands. Most of the day was spent memorizing the Quran. The highlight of this education, recalls Yaron, was lying in an open grave in the middle of the night while their teachers would stand over them and read them verses from the Quran to evoke the feeling of the moment of ascension when the soul rises to heaven. Personally, it took me almost 15 years to get over that experience. Any misbehaviour was strictly punished. There was an incident of 2 children, 13-year-olds, who were suspected of being intimate with each other, says Yaron. They pulled us out of bed at 4 a.m, explained what these boys were accused of, and cut off their heads right in front of us. Yaron stayed in the mosque for 5 years. I never got used to it, he said. It only got harder. I didn't quite connect to this education. Yaron noticed contradictions in his studies and began asking questions. A central theme of Yaron's education was hatred of Jews. They told us that Jews are bloodthirsty vampires who rob, rape, murder, steal. They told us that the Jew is the lowest creature, enemy number 1, impure. Killing Jews was considered a most admirable goal. Of all the students at the mosque, Yaron was the only one who had been outside of Gaza and who had actually seen Jews. For his many questions, Yaron was severely beaten. Then his teachers transferred him to a different mosque in Yatta, near Hebron, in the hopes of turning Yaron into a real shahid. He spent 18 months in Yatta, where the education was even more cruel than in Gaza. At age 16, Yaron managed to escape from the mosque. At first he went home to Lod, but his family was not happy to see him. His older brothers told him that it wasn't his home anymore and that they didn't want him there. His mother, an obedient Muslim woman, did not say a word in his defense. His father didn't get involved either. After 2 weeks, Yaron escaped from home and went to live in a Muslim cemetery. This was the only place where I felt safe, he said. Nobody was going to look for me in a cemetery. I went out to look for food at night, in garbage cans, scraps, things like that. Yaron spent 10 days at the cemetery. One night as he was searching for food, Yaron met a Jewish man who offered to help him. He saved my life, says Yaron. He gave me money and put me on a bus to Eilat. There, another Jewish family took him in. They helped him get in touch with an organization for at-risk youth in Tel Aviv. I discovered something that was completely new to me, Yaron says. Something that in Judaism, and in general in the Western world, is taught from a young age. The sanctity of life. I discovered that I am allowed to live. I am allowed to dream. The Jews took me in. They didn't ask questions. They didn't care if I was Arab or not. They just let me stay in their home. They gave me food. They kept me safe from all my brothers. They kept me safe from dangers. These people instilled in me confidence, a certainty that I am a human being like any other. They taught me to learn, to grow, to be human, to go to the beach, to have friends. I didn't know how to behave with ordinary people, how to have a conversation with them. I didn't even know how to hold a knife or a fork. They had to teach me everything, starting from scratch. Grateful to the Jewish people for all the help he'd received, Yaron decided to enlist in the Israeli army. This was the only thing I could do in return for the good that the Israeli Jews did for me, he says. At first, the IDF recruitment office rejected him, but I don't give up easily, says Yaron. Eventually, he enlisted and served in the elite Givati unit. During his army service, Yaron was sent to Gaza. He was impressed with his fellow soldiers' conduct toward the local residents. Israeli soldiers were nothing like the bloodthirsty monsters portrayed by his teachers. Just the opposite. They were ethical and principled. They would share food and drink with Gazan families. They didn't kill anyone for no reason. Once, Yaron's unit came close to the same mosque where he was horribly abused only 3 years earlier. It was a difficult moment for Yaron. He desperately wanted to take revenge on his tormentors. When Yaron saw the same teacher who had cruelly beaten him, he couldn't hold himself back. I raised my gun and was about to shoot, he says. Yaron's commander grabbed his gun away from him. He spoke to him and calmed him down. It's an amazing thing, says Yaron. The person who saved the life of the one who taught me to kill Jews just because they are Jews. He is an officer in the IDF. Later, in a heart-to-heart conversation, this officer taught Yaron to sanctify life, not death. That was when I decided that I wanted to join this nation. It was a long journey. After the army, Yaron returned to Tel Aviv and studied to become a chef. Then he went to what he describes as heaven on earth, Yeshiva Machon Meir in Jerusalem, where he underwent the conversion process to become Jewish. And I want to show you a picture of him actually praying, because this is just an amazing story, an amazing transformation. Have a look at him here. That is Yaron in Jerusalem. Today, Yaron is married and the father of 3 daughters. He is a popular speaker and has been invited to speak at colleges and universities, as well as various communities in Israel. Yaron is currently working on a book about his experiences. As I learned more about Judaism, I began to understand that all the darkness I went through in my life can be transformed into great light. Many people go through hard times and come close to despair, but through hearing my story, they find strength and perseverance. Shortly after the brutal Hamas terrorist attack, Yaron shared what happened on October 7th is not even the height of their cruelty. They have many more methods. They hate Jews simply because they are Jews. There is no other reason. They say it's because of the occupation. But in the Quran it is written that the land of Israel was given to the people of Israel. We were taught blind hatred with no rhyme or reason. It's just a religious matter. I literally left the grave. I am alive and I have a mission to bring the truth to light. When I was in the army and even now in the reserves, I stand for the people who sanctify life. I want to fight for the truth. Yaron warns the world about the threat of radical Islam, which he says is also spreading in Europe and other places. For years I've been warning anyone who would listen that they are capable of the horrors we saw them commit on October 7th. People didn't believe me. They said I was exaggerating. People think this is Israel's problem. People should thank Israel, because Israel is fighting the war for the whole world. Israel is fighting for the sanctity of life. This is truly an amazing story, and I saw it written by Jihadist Litvak on Aish.com. Truly amazing and truly inspiring, and it should give us also a sense of confidence that people can change, and even people who have great hatred, taught to have great hatred in their hearts, can have absolutely remarkable transformations, and that should give us a lot of hope and a lot of confidence that we can truly defeat the hatred that we see. I'm Ollie Annisfeld and you're watching JTV. Hi everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to watch another one, click here. If you want to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest JTV content, click here. And if you're feeling really keen, you can click the join button down below underneath this video, where you can get perks including early access to new videos and private live discussions with me, where we can talk about JTV content and strategy moving forward, and I'll get to hear from you. Thanks again for watching.